All right, here we are. We are going to start the organizational communication module lectures. This is lecture 1. This is the first part of it. I'm going to break it up into 3 20-minute parts so that you can get a break and I can get a break. Understand that this technology is still new to me, so it's not going to be completely smooth, but we will get these lectures together. Okay, so before we start, I want to make sure that we're all on the same page regarding a couple of words. This is because during the summer it became clear that there were different interpretations of what each of these words meant. So the first one is organization. Seems pretty obvious, but somebody said to me, organizational communication, the OD is more than just businesses. And I said, well, the term organization to me is literally any work environment. That can be paid, non-paid, volunteer, government, for-profit, non-profit. And really the only characteristic that I think is important is that there's some sort of a long-term structure with formal and informal communication flow. So in other words, if you were running a seminar that is a one-day seminar, even though you would be aware of some group communication issues, it's not as the same as the main organizational communication issues that I want to talk about. So anytime I use the term organization, I'm talking about the whole range of organizations that exist. Same thing with communication. Somebody said, well, isn't organizational communication just about people talking to people in the workplace? And I said, no, it's really any interaction that takes place in the workplace where there's an exchange of information. And so what you're doing is looking at, again, the patterns and flows of those exchanges of information. And then finally, channel and media. And I just want to let you know I'm going to use those interchangeably because in the second lecture, I'm going to talk about something called media richness. And it's the term that the scholars chose for it. And it's a little confusing when you think of media as TV or radio or whatever. So for us, we're just talking about either channel or media is the method that's used to share the information between people. So in the organization, everything from face-to-face to electronic, and in fact now, and we'll talk some about this, the electronic face-to-face where you're holding virtual meetings. So I'm going to talk about 3 organizational communication styles, and they relate to 3 organizational structures. And you're going to probably get some of this in the organizational theory class as well, so I'm not going to go into a lot of the detail, but just enough so we can talk about communication within these structures. Remember that these different organizational structures come about, first of all, historically, right? From the Industrial Revolution on, the evolution of the workplace kind of helped lead some of these different business structures, and also the theoretical models that were evolving in the 20th century about people and what motivates them, what motivates people to be productive or to be happy and satisfied in their work. So the 3 models we're going to look at are the classical model that started, at the turn of the century when you have people congregating in urban areas and the evolution of factories and larger businesses, right? And the human resources, human relations model that evolves in the mid-century. The OD model comes about because of this. They're sort of intertwined. And really became the main model really up until and through the turn of the century. And then the cultural model, which the 21st century has really embraced. And we'll talk more about that, which is really the result of innovation and the type of worker in the 21st century and the work environment that they demand. There's also a style that I want to talk about called systems, but I want to talk about it in the 3rd lecture because it has within it a whole other piece about communication patterns that I want to spend some time on. So all these different structures, if you will, produce communication, and they produce different types of communication in the organization. All right, let's start with the classical approach. Obviously, the classical approach, the oldest approach, the classical approach was based on the notion that you wanted workers to be efficient, that the more efficient they were, the more productive they were, the more productive they were, the more successful the company was. A very, very straightforward kind of approach. There were 4 things, I think, that characterize this approach to organizational communication. Standard operating procedures, the notion that everybody would do the work in the same way, kind of the factory model, if you will. But take that into business operations or even nonprofit operations, there was so much of the notion that you were training people to be your kind of employee. And that even plays up in when you look at the hiring under this model and the style of hiring and the style of employee you were looking for who could then be trained to be this uniform employee. And the other one that's interesting is this notion that evolved, that we wanted this interruption-free environment. In other words, an environment that is separate from the home, separate from a social environment, so you could concentrate on your work. And again, assuming that that kind of environment was going to be more productive and more efficient. And then finally, the main way you incentivize workers in this classical structure is through salary and salary increases. That the more you pay people, the more content they are and the more productive, which of course they realized was not always entirely true when you get to the human relations, human resource model. So if we had to summarize this, it would be that a managed employee is a productive employee. Okay, the communication in this classical approach, we're going to look at 4 factors each time: content, direction of flow, channel, and style. And these are things I'm going to ask you to use in your worksheet when you look at an organization yourself. So the content of the communication in a classical approach would be primarily task-oriented. And of course, you can again see how that would follow. So the content is going to be, it's not going to be about innovation, it's not going to be about socialization, it's going to be what you need to get the work done. The direction of the flow is vertical, up and down, and primarily downward from manager to employee. You would see more communication from that direction than you would see from the other direction. Again, this is kind of the formal communication. Obviously, informal communication in any workplace, if people are sitting around on a break and the way they talk, is going to have a much more fluidness to it. And we will talk about the informal when we get to this networking piece I want to share with you. Then we come to the channel. Historically, traditionally, the classical channel would have been written. You know, these are the rules. This is the book. This is the training book, right? This is your handbook on how to do things. This is the memo that's written from the manager. Today, I think emails, again, are a sign of a very classical approach, especially emails from managers directed to employees, from HR departments to employees. And then we talk about style. And style can be the language, which again would be very formal, the form of address, which would be very formal, and the nonverbal style of the dress environment itself would also be formal. The formal offices, the formal style of the dress code. So in the classical approach, you see all these elements in the way the managers and the employees communicate. Just to give you a quick example, when I was Associate Vice President for Faculty Affairs at Sonoma State, and I had 3 different provosts, all male, but interestingly enough, I could see different styles in the way they communicated with us. And my first provost definitely had a much softer style, much more human relations style. He would get up and walk and stand in your doorway to talk to you about a project. In the meetings, he would do more listening. And then I had for an interim provost who was really, really ultra classical, and in the sense that he wanted everything written. Everything he said to us, he stayed in his office and wrote emails as if we didn't exist. And we had to put things in a folder for him that we had written out. It was very, very slow and frustrating and incredibly isolating. And of course, we didn't feel very good about the work environment, needless to say. And then the third provost was even more interesting because he had a very casual approach to the way he looked, the way he dressed, the way he talked. And yet, his style of communicating when it came to formal communication was definitely through email, right? And definitely directing things back and forth. I'll talk more about this when I talk about Sonoma State in a later lecture. I wanted to give you one, forgot these 2 important points. First of all, the classical structure in an organization may not always be obvious because you may have an organization, a nonprofit, even an activist company, and it doesn't appear because of the product or the way they present to the public that they are classical. But when you look at how they are organized as a company, you're going to see these kinds of elements and be able to recognize it as a classical approach to communication. The second thing is that in some very modern companies, you will still see some classical communication structure that exists. And that's an important thing to be able to pull out, because it'll tell you, again, what the company is showing on the outside and what may be going on the inside. All right, I want to give you this sort of traditional example of a classical style. This is McDonald's, and it's really about the McDonald's Hamburger University that started in the early 60s. And the idea was that you were training your managers and your workers in the various restaurants so there would be uniformity. Uniformity not only in how they dressed, not only in how they made the food, but how they approached the customer. So the first video I want to show you is an old one, filmed in 1969, so the quality isn't very good. Pay attention to the people and the way they are being taught in this video, all right, and contrast it to the second one that was made in 2010. Now I'm going to escape out of this like this. Okay, I'm going to pull this up, and we will go ahead with Hamburger University. Let's get the mute off. And
University. It's exactly what it sounds like. McDonald's training ground for their
there, I messed up already. That's the second one. Sorry, I was getting too excited. Here's the first one. All right, let's go ahead and look at this one.
As the Dean of your university, it's not only my honor but my pleasure to welcome each class as it arrives. And as today, to bid them farewell. The degree itself brings respect. Lets me know that I can go out there, I know everything, just about. Well, of course I'm going to hang this thing up over my desk. A beginning inventory is an inventory that starts the first day of the month, or the first day of the week, or even the first time in the morning is your beginning inventory. And the correct answers to the inventory problems are, and it will list them.
Professor Berry, just how successful has the system proven to be?
A key to completing this successfully is that they have more of the basic understanding of a beverage yield or a fry yield or something of this sort. They get a better understanding of why, if your meat versus buns is off, why it's off, and what areas to look for that it should be corrected in.
Professor Gordon, is this really an academic subject?
Hamburgers? I think so. Okay, the system we're going to teach you is what we call the 12-12 system. And it simply means we're going to be cooking patties in runs of 12. The onions are put on as soon as the patties are laid. This is because they are dehydrated onions and they need time to reconstitute. Just using a hammer-like motion over the patties. The need for the special skills, the involvement, the knowledge, competitiveness that does exist. I think that you as a graduating class, going out to join those thousands of others that have graduated before you, I think you understand this. Hey, you notice this first patty is starting to get a little dark around the edge, and you can see meat juices starting to come through. You'll know that this is when the patty is almost ready to turn. Congratulations. Now, what was the toughest part of this course for you? Well, I thought running the hamburgers, trying to meet the demands of the production, trying to keep the bin full up here. Getting used to the meat systems, of course, and working with the buns. Basic refrigeration really snowed me. It was very important to me to come here. I've waited since I was 15. I kind of wanted to get in this business. I started then, and this is kind of the big first step. I suggest to you, and for your personal insight, that you're about to join a highly specialized E-Life. I myself laughed when I was first told about it. Do you have any special rotation for turning the meat on the grill? Yes, you should turn it in the same order that they go down. What does this course mean to you? What kind of knowledge are you bringing back to Canada?
It's the first step for me, because I want to get my next step next year, which will be for the other course they're offering, and after that I'll take my doctorate.
Dean White, this is an age when university administrators have all kinds of difficulties. There's money problems, student revolt, and so on. Now, you run a very special university. Do you have any of these problems? I don't have the problems that Hayakawa has on the coast, of course. At this present time, we don't foresee any.
This is an autonomous gathering here, purely controlled by the professors at the university.
What is campus life like at Hamburger University?
Very cool.
Well, usually after classes, guys go for dinner and then a few drinks, and they usually get in about 10 o'clock and finish the rest of their work and then go to bed. But we've got some guys around here that keep walking down the halls and climbing out windows and what have you. A regular panic around here.
Contrary to public opinion, the hot dog is not the most common sandwich in the United States. The hamburger is.
Making hamburgers, as most people think, they just figure you put a piece of meat on and you flip it around and you have it prepared. But for McDonald's, it's sort of an art.
One of the things a good manager does is every morning he taste tests each of his products to make sure that what he's serving to his customers is correct. So while we have all these hamburgers cooked, why doesn't everybody try one? And I think that your role in society is cut out for you. That role is leadership. I ask you to use it well.
Okay, so that. Sorry about that. I hit the wrong button. This is getting a little crazed for me. Let's see if I can get through here. There we go. Okay, sorry. Let's go here. Hold on here. Okay, sorry about that. All right, let's go here. Okay, here's the second one.
Exactly what it sounds like. McDonald's training ground for their high potential managers. And they graduate with this, a degree in hamburgerology.
Lunch Coke, thank you. Have a good day.
We need more sausage, please. McDonald's serves 60 million people a day, but here at Hamburger U, students don't learn how to flip burgers. The food is actually fake. These students are learning the management skills to make a restaurant hum in a 5-day course, grooming them to be owners.
Do we have a bacon and cheese bagel coming, guys?
In the first simulation, long lines, frustrated customers, and flustered managers. Then the orders get more complicated, designed to test the limits of the operation.
Any more muffins, please? How do you think this is impacting the customers?
Everybody's getting upset. All you see is the manager running back and forth and not really helping. It's more chaotic than anything else.
So, back to class.
All right, my teams. Should we talk about what just happened?
They were friendly, I just wasn't getting my food very quickly.
It was just really busy and kept holding, so she kept sending everybody on break.
Did we see high service times?
Yes.
Unhappy crew?
Yes. Yes.
Unhappy customers?
Yes.
So they try again, this time applying the lessons of the classroom to cut the chaos in the kitchen.
We're going to smile for our customers.
Yes, we are. So I decided to try for myself.
That's your order.
Okay.
And you're going to need to act this out a little agitated. Obviously, hurry. Imagine
On
how that
purpose,
works.
I have to act agitated. Thank you. Okay, here we go.
Hi, would you like to try my smoker today?
I would like cinnamon melts, a bacon, egg, and cheese bagel, a sausage, egg McMuffin, and a hash brown. I'm just really in a rush. Pretty fast so far. Let's see if they get the order right.
We have a bacon, egg, and cheese bagel. We have a cinnamon melt, and we have one hash brown.
And what about the sausage McMuffin?
Sausage, egg muffin.
Let's see. Come on, guys. They said it was in a rush. Let's go. That was 1 minute and 30 seconds. It's still rushed, but the second service was much smoother.
2 cinnamon melts for side 2 on side 1.
Better communication made a difference.
My professors teach us, very important life skills about, customer relations and most importantly, running a multi-billion-dollar company.
How many McDonald's do you want to own and operate?
As many as I can.
Founded in 1961 in an Ohio basement, Hamburger U has grown from just 14 students to more than 250,000 graduates, including McDonald's current CEO. So it's no joke. McDonald's says this is the key to the company's success.
We may be a big corporation in the eyes of many, but in the restaurants, in that local community. It's that operator that makes the connection.
The transformation comes in the form of, I can do this. I realize that I am a leader.
Over the years, companies like Target and Walmart have come to watch how McDonald's trains its employees, and some colleges even give students credit for attending Hamburger U, showing there's much more behind those famous golden arches. Poppy Harlow, CNN Money, Oak Brook, Illinois.
Okay, so I just wanted you to get a flavor of how the classical approach. What's interesting there is by 2010 you can see the team approach in terms of the teaching that was going on in the classroom and the the diversity of the employees as opposed to the 1969 one. All right, I'm going to stop here, and we're going to hope that this is working. This will be the end of this first part A, and now you can go to part B for the same lecture.